Over 125 people were killed by a single leopard across 8 years, along one of the busiest pilgrim routes in India. It remains the most prolific man-eating animal ever recorded by wildlife authorities. A wild leopard left alone is already one of the hardest predators on Earth to find. It moves in near silence, hunts mostly by night, and given the choice, avoids people almost completely. So how does one animal go unnoticed for 8 straight years while killing more human beings than any recorded predator in history? Its story begins in the Garhwal region of northern India, in the foothills leading up toward the Himalayas in 1918. This was pilgrim country. Every year, tens of thousands of people walked the narrow mountain trails toward the sacred temples of Kedarnath and Badrinath, sleeping in small roadside shelters, moving in scattered groups, often alone on long stretches of path between villages. It was, without anyone realizing it yet, close to perfect territory for a predator that had learned something no ordinary leopard ever learns. The killings started the same year a deadly influenza epidemic swept through the region, killing thousands and leaving behind something no one had accounted for: a sudden, terrible abundance of unburied and hastily buried human bodies. Investigators believe this is where it began. A leopard, likely already scavenging the dead, discovered that human flesh required no stalking, no risk, no fight. And once the epidemic passed and the bodies were gone, the leopard didn't stop looking for the same easy meal. It simply started making its own. For years, it worked the pilgrim road with a kind of patience no one had a name for yet. It killed inside homes through walls made of little more than mud and loose stone, dragging victims out through gaps barely wide enough for a cat to fit through. It killed on open trails in broad daylight, and it killed at night, entering shelters where a dozen or more pilgrims lay sleeping, taking one person from the middle of a crowded room without waking the others until it was already gone. Villages tried everything. Fires were kept burning through the night. Watchmen stood guard in shifts. None of it held for long. The leopard adapted to torches. It adapted to guards. It adapted to barricaded doors, testing them at leisure, returning to the same village weeks later, once vigilance had quietly worn down, the way it always eventually does. The British colonial government, desperate and embarrassed, tried nearly everything available to them: traps, poison, rewards large enough to draw hunters from across the country. Parties of soldiers were sent in to sweep the hillsides. Every one of them failed. Some hunters gave up entirely. At least one was seriously mauled and barely escaped with his life. The leopard, meanwhile, kept moving through a landscape of steep ravines, dense forest, and terraced farmland that gave it more hiding places than any search party could realistically cover. Entire villages along the pilgrim route emptied out after dark. People stopped traveling the roads alone, stopped sleeping near outer walls, stopped trusting the ordinary rhythms of daily life the moment the sun went down. By 1925, the government had one name left to call: Jim Corbett, the same hunter who decades earlier had ended the reign of the deadliest tiger ever recorded, was asked to come to Rudraprayag and do it again. Corbett arrived to find a landscape gripped by something close to superstition. Villagers whispered that this was no ordinary leopard, that it couldn't be an animal at all, that something supernatural was moving through the hills wearing an animal's shape. Because no real leopard, they reasoned, could outsmart every trap, survive every ambush, and vanish so completely, over and over, for so many years. Corbett didn't dismiss the fear. He understood exactly why it existed. But he treated the leopard as what it was: an extremely intelligent, extremely cautious animal that had simply learned more about survival than any hunter sent after it. He spent months studying its patterns rather than chasing it outright. He tracked its movements between villages, learned the specific terrain it favored for approach and escape, and turned down opportunities to shoot simply because the timing or the angle wasn't close to certain. More than once, the leopard came dangerously close to him in the dark, close enough that Corbett himself later admitted how easily the hunt could have gone the other way. The end came in the spring of 1926, after months of patient tracking, when Corbett finally caught the leopard, exposed at close range near a village it had been stalking. He fired. The leopard went down, and for the first time in 8 years, the pilgrim road stood still, quiet in a way it hadn't been in a very long time. When they examined the body, they found an animal that was old and that showed the scars of a long, hard life, but no obvious old wound explaining the killing the way a broken jaw had explained the tiger before it. The truth was less dramatic and more unsettling. This leopard hadn't been crippled into hunting people. It had simply discovered, during a moment of mass death and chaos, that humans were slow, unarmed, and frequently alone on a trail with nowhere to run. And it had spent the next 8 years refining that discovery into a devastatingly effective strategy no one had thought a leopard was capable of. Corbett went on to write about the hunt in detail, turning it into one of the most famous accounts of man-eating animals ever published, a record still studied today by wildlife biologists trying to understand exactly how and why a small number of predators out of millions crossed the line separating them from us. Like the tiger before it, the leopard of Rudraprayag was not born a monster. It was an animal that found an opening nobody expected, in a specific place, at a specific moment, when a wave of human death handed it something it should have never had reason to learn. The pilgrim road to Kedarnath is walked by hundreds of thousands of people every year now, largely unremarkable, mostly safe, but somewhere in the hills above it, the story is still told the way it was told for 8 terrified years, quietly, carefully, and always with one eye on the tree line after dark.